the torrid zone. It is raining below the belt. Let us turn back and smell the lush plants and trees until the sun returns still above, shining light direct into the forests of our bodies. As the bright flowers between our legs bud and bloom and grow. Aristotle classified what we know deep down inside. As we open our mouths and drink in the clouds, we recall we are varied animal life. We call pleasure, we call love, we call life as we fall. Tropical, human, humid and moist, sunshine, rain and leaves, petals, tears and cries of joy. We are wet, we are slippery, we are snails, we are secretions, creations, fluid hibiscus. We recall us, the torrid zone.
Et là, je pense à ce qu'on a fait. Reef call, tu veux parler de reef call par rapport au seaweed et l'expérience que tu as vécue pendant cette résidence d'artiste? Ça, c'est intéressant.
Ouais. Ben, encore une fois, on est allé, we went to la prairie, but another area. I started having, I don't know, it was like I was walking or swimming and then I suddenly felt the brush of the seaweed against my body. And so I had no idea that I was going to have an interaction with the seaweed, but it was like the seaweed called me. And I think a lot of our work is also about listening. So even though we're using words and images and sounds, within that there is a deep listening embedded within the work. Because for me, before anything we need to listen, but listening is not just with the ears, it's also with your skin, with your eyes, with your nose. It's a multi-sensual experience to listen. And so at that point I listened to the seaweed, and I'm still not sure what the seaweed is telling me. It's because it's a process, but thus far the experience has been ecstatic and primordial and very sometimes quite dark is not the right word, but I feel myself being pulled into a deeper, darker space, similar to death, but not. And this surrendering to being entangled and tied up, and allowing the seaweed to have its way with me. So I start by maybe touching or caressing after, well, the seaweed starts by saying, hey, look at me, I'm here. I know I'm not a fascinating, beautiful shell or a fabulous flower, right, but I'm here. And then suddenly thinking, oh, okay. And then the seaweed does something to me, and then I respond, and it's, and the placing of seaweed on my eyes has me going to endless spaces of indigo and light and magic. And it reminds me of the butterfly pea clitoris flower tea I drink every day, the same color. And Tiamat, the goddess of chaos, of the deeper oceans with the dragons as guardians. They're all linked, and everything's linked. So the seaweed for me has been very, very special and humbling. It's a bit like moss, and I think I read somewhere that, you know, at the beginning of this world's creation or time, you know, at the beginning, before the beginning, the ocean started to produce these seaweed, created oxygen, no? Through photosynthesis, etc. So started creating life within the ocean. And then the seaweed crawled out of the ocean. And so that you often have this sort of quite soft and gluey type of seaweed on the liminal shoreline space. And I'm very interested in liminal spaces, the spaces in between words, but also the spaces in between the ecotones of our lands and oceans. The shoreline is that ecotone. Then possibly that seaweed crept out and then became moss. And moss is very, very humble, but very, very strong and resilient, and possibly our greatest teacher at this moment in time of how to survive and thrive. It is raining below the belt. Let us turn back and smell the lush plants and trees.
Oui, c'est ce que tu dis dans The Torrid Zone, en fait. Le fait de retourner à la sagesse du corps qui ressent, plutôt que d'être dans des définitions, des catégorisations du mental.
Yeah, because for me, our work together is a bit like in Karen Barrett's term time being, and the space-time continuum. There's a time and a being, and it's not about intellectual understanding of what's going on. It's not about planning or thinking, but being in that moment or in that time space. My partner Fabrizio speaks of the term intra-wet communication, whether it's through touch, which is his modality, but also when we speak, our spit allows the sound to travel. So there's a wetness in our words. So that feeling that I have whenever we meet, of not having to over intellectualize or mulch mentally on things. Yeah, it's very much what I was talking about in the tourism, because at the time I was doing a PhD in ecopoetics, and I eventually decided after 2 years to let go of that, because it was interrupting the poetic inquiry, which is what I had actually wanted to do, but I was unable to because of intellectual terms and things. And that poem, again, it's all entangled, so it's about my personal experience with words and returning to my mother island, Mauritius, but also about the way the so-called global north, even that term is a bit weird, in the global south, the global north has always and is still labeling the global south. So Aristotle calls the tropics the torrid zone, and in our imagination, torrid has a sort of lurid feel, like it's something that would happen in an affair or something hot and naughty, and whereas temperate is calm and collected and balanced. And these labels, I mean, for example, torrid for me sounds very much like terrorist, coming from the south. And I think also of how this moment in time we have a genocide occurring in Gaza, which could very well be linked to the term terrorist being placed upon a people. And so that poem for me was a reclaiming of what it means to be torrid, and also a recalling, because I felt called by the ocean. I think we've spoken about this many times. Like, I think that you as a filmmaker, when you go to a place, it's the place that calls you to do what you do. You don't have a plan. Am I right?
Oui. Tu te laisses en état de réceptivité et c'est un lieu qui t'appelle, qui va te dire quelque chose, qui a quelque chose à transmettre. Dans ce qu'on fait créativement, on n'a pas de volonté particulière, c'est-à-dire qu'on se laisse complètement emporter, pénétrer. On transmet le message que la nature ou les éléments nous donnent. On est dans un état de réceptivité. Donc déjà, le mental aussi doit se taire quelque part. C'est vraiment quelque chose de corporel, de charnel, ouais. Cet appel. Ouais. Donc on reçoit ça. Et de cœur, d'ouverture. En fait, un état d'ouverture.
Ouais. Et pour moi, technology means something else.
Oui, en plus.
Because techno, techne making. So that's why my ongoing project, The Technology of Tenderness, is about using our soft technologies of speech, of body, of movement, of touch, in order to create tenderness for ourselves and for the world around us.
Est-ce que tu peux parler, par exemple, du fait, les offerings, quand tu fais des offrandes, ça c'est aussi une partie importante.
Well, at one point I started realizing that even in the world of so-called well-being and somatic practices, etc., that are becoming more and more popular, there is a form of extractivism of joy, in the sense that we go into nature and we play with a tree and then we feel better and then we return to our lives. And even if we don't damage that place and treat it with respect, there's something missing here. And I think this is because often in our various cultures we see nature as a mother, and the mother has got unconditional love and will continuously give to us, and so we just need to receive. And I think that's part of the problem, even though I too sometimes experience aspects of nature as motherly. But I began to try and have a reciprocal relationship with nature without being too anthropocentric. I don't know, maybe I am, but I mean, I am a human, so I will experience through the filters of my being. So for me it's like that experiencing needs to be where I also give something. Last year I came up with the term eco-cradle, and so my partner and I have started now giving body work to the elements of nature, and also offerings I've always done, like giving natural things back to nature. So sometimes a shell will speak to me and I'll take it for a while, but it's borrowing it, and then I'll bring it back into nature and give it back to her or him at the right time. And also I always give my hair wherever I am when I leave and the place has given me something, because it contains all my DNA. Likely it's like saying I give this to you. And then there's also the act, yesterday you cleaned up the beach, because there's a lot of trash on certain beaches, washed up from the water and also dumped. this cleaning is important, I think, as an act of love, not as a duty, and it becomes joyful then. And so, yeah, so seeing the world more as lover, as other, to be loved, and to love the other. But for me, poetry, begins in the body, right? So I don't see poetry as something that begins in the mind abstractly. It's something that your body is present and then it listens, no? And then you transmit. But then the traditional form nowadays is for poetry to be on the page. However, the origins of poetry are oral and not at all written. And so the technology of writing has taken away from this organic orality. But interestingly, the new technologies which you use bring back that ancient space, return us to the origins of the poetic voice, which is really about the interaction of humans with nature. Because the Native Americans have this saying, I read somewhere, can't remember where, that the role of the human is to amuse the gods and nature, and also to praise, because of all the sentient beings, we are possibly the ones, I don't know, but possibly the ones that notice beauty a lot. Other animals do too, but it is something that is very special about humans. And so this listening and returning to the sound of words, which actually originally came from nature until we alphabetized and made it all abstract, is made possible through video, music, sound, these more so-called hard technologies.